He had a secret, you see. A secret buried under a lifetime of sensible shoes and balanced checkbooks, tucked away in a dusty corner of a mind that now mostly worried about cholesterol and grandkids. His name was Arthur, and if you passed him on the street, you'd see a retired history teacher, a little stooped, fond of cardigans and quiet afternoons. You would never, in a million years, guess that this man was once a kingpin. Not of drugs or crime, no, something far more innocent, and in its own way, just as cutthroat. Arthur was a Beanie Baby mogul, and the story of how that came to be and how it ended is one he hadn't told a soul for over 20 years. It's a story about a fever that swept this nation, a fever that caught a perfectly sensible man in its grip and showed him a side of himself he never knew existed. So, if you'll lean in a little closer, if you'll join me in uncovering this true tale of plastic pellets and grand, foolish dreams, we'll begin. And if this story of a man and his forgotten passion resonates with you, well, perhaps you'll consider liking this video and subscribing, so we can share more stories like this one. Because everyone, it seems, has a secret waiting to be told. It all started, as so many things did in those days, in a brightly lit, endlessly cheerful fast food joint. It was 1996. The air smelled of grease and disinfectant. The chairs were bolted to the floor, and for the price of a Happy Meal, you got a small, bean-filled creature with a name like Squealer or Patty. Arthur was there with his 7-year-old daughter, Emily. His world then was a comfortable orbit of lesson plans, faculty meetings, and the gentle, predictable rhythm of a man who believed life's greatest surprises were finding a good parking spot. He watched as Emily unwrapped her toy, her small fingers struggling with the plastic tag. It was a small, brown bear. Peggy, the tag said. He remembers the feeling, not of excitement, but of a mild, paternal satisfaction, a simple joy for his little girl. But then something shifted. A week later, he was in a toy store buying a birthday present for a nephew, and he saw it. A whole display of these same little animals. And the woman next to him wasn't a child. She was a grown woman in a sharp business suit, and she was frantically, almost desperately, digging through the bin. She wasn't looking for just any one. She was looking for a specific one. A purple elephant named Daisy. Arthur, ever the curious historian, asked her why. She looked at him as if he'd just asked why the sky was blue. "They're retiring her," she whispered, her voice tight with the kind of fervor he associated with historical gold rushes. "This is the last shipment. In a year, this one will be worth a fortune." And she clutched the purple elephant to her chest, as if it were a bar of solid gold. That moment, right there in the garish light of the toy aisle, was the spark. It wasn't about the toy. It wasn't even about the money. Not really. It was about the idea. The idea that value, real, tangible value, could be hidden in the most mundane of places. Arthur, the man who taught teenagers about the Dutch tulip mania, felt a strange, intellectual itch. He saw it not as a craze, but as a phenomenon, a living, breathing piece of social history unfolding right in front of him. He bought 3 that day, not for Emily, for himself. A spotted dog named Spot, a lobster named Lobster, and yes, another Peggy the bear, just in case. He placed them on his bookshelf at home, next to his volumes on the Civil War and the Roman Empire. They looked oddly at home. This was how it began, not with a bang, but with a quiet, curious purchase. He started reading, his historian's mind latching onto the details, the poems on the tags, the rare errors, like a typos in the name, the retired list, a sacred text circulated on early internet forums he accessed with a dial-up modem that screeched like a banshee. His wife, Carol, would smile that gentle, slightly bemused smile of hers. "Your new hobby, art?" she'd ask, watching him meticulously organize the little creatures in clear plastic containers, each with its own acid-free tissue paper. He'd just nod. A hobby. Yes, that's what it was. A harmless diversion for a man entering his 50s. But a hobby doesn't make your heart pound when you walk into a Hallmark store. A hobby doesn't involve driving to 3 different states on a rumor of a Princess Diana bear, the one with the purple rose. He remembered that trip vividly. It was a drizzly Tuesday, and he'd called in a personal day. He drove 4 hours to a small, family-owned gift shop in rural Pennsylvania, a place that smelled of potpourri and old wood. His hands were actually trembling as he asked the elderly woman behind the counter. She nodded, slowly, and pulled out a single, pristine box from under the counter. The bear was beautiful, regal. He paid $80 for it, a small fortune then. As he walked back to his car, the bear cradled in his arms. He didn't feel like a history teacher. He felt like an explorer who had just discovered a new continent. He was no longer just Arthur. He was the collector. His study, once a sanctuary of quiet scholarship, became his war room. The bookshelves slowly surrendered their space to rows and rows of plastic-covered Beanie Babies. He had a system, a ledger. He knew the acquisition date, the price, the projected value. He'd spend hours on the phone with other collectors, his voice a low, serious murmur. They had code names. He was the professor. There was the general from Ohio, a retired military man who approached collecting with tactical precision, and Lady Luck from Florida, a widow who believed certain numbers were lucky. They weren't just friends. They were confidants, fellow travelers in a secret society. Carol's bemused smile began to fade, replaced by a quiet concern. "Arthur," she'd say, "it's just a lot of stuffed animals." He'd wave a hand, dismissively. "You don't understand, Carol. This is different. This is history in the making." The peak, the absolute zenith of the madness, came in the spring of 1999. The frenzy was everywhere. News stories about college funds being built on Beanie Babies. Divorces fought over collections. Arthur's own collection was, by then, formidable. He had the early, rare ones. The Valentino the bear, the Humphrey the camel. He had the error versions, the ones with the mis-stitched tags that were supposedly worth thousands. According to his meticulous calculations, based on the prices in the official collector's guide and the whispers on the forums, his study contained, on paper, over $100,000 worth of potential. It was a number that took his breath away. It was more than his teacher's pension would ever be. He started dreaming not of a comfortable retirement, but of an extravagant one. A villa, world travel, all from these small, bean-filled animals. And then he made the decision, the one that would haunt him for decades. A legendary collector, a man known only as the Whale, was liquidating a portion of his mythic collection. He was offering a complete set of the first-generation Teenie Beanies, the ones from McDonald's, every single one, in mint condition, with the tags protected by special tag protectors. The price was $20,000, a king's ransom. Arthur sat at his desk, the calculator in his hand, the numbers blurring before his eyes. He had the money. It was their savings, the rainy day fund he and Carol had painstakingly built over 25 years of marriage. It was for a new roof, for emergencies. He wrestled with it. He truly did. But the logic of the Craze was airtight. This set, this complete, pristine set, in a year, it would double, triple even. It was the crown jewel, the final piece that would cement his legacy. He remembered the conversation with Carol. He framed it as an investment, a sure thing. He talked about compound interest, about market trends, using his teacher's voice to lend authority to the madness. Carol had looked at him, her eyes wide with a fear he had never seen before. "Arthur, that's our security. That's for everything." But he was lost in the fever dream. He was the professor, the savvy collector, the man who saw the future. He assured her. He promised her. He took the money. He drove to a neutral location, a hotel conference room, and met the Whale, a surprisingly ordinary-looking man in a golf shirt. He handed over the cashier's check. He received a locked, aluminum briefcase. Inside, nestled in foam, were the tiny, perfect toys. In that moment, holding that case, he felt like the smartest man alive. The turn, when it came, was not dramatic. It was quiet, insidious. It started with a whisper on the forums, a rumor that Ty, the company, was producing more, that the retired list was a marketing ploy. Then, the collector's guide prices, which had only ever gone up, seemed to stall. Then, they began to tick downward. At first, it was easy to dismiss. A market correction, a temporary dip. Arthur held firm. The general from Ohio called him, his voice uncharacteristically shaky. "Professor, I'm hearing things. Bad things." Arthur reassured him. "It's just noise, General. Stay the course." But the noise got louder. The news stories changed. They weren't about fortunes anymore. They were about bubbles, about manias, about fools and their money. The true, gut-wrenching moment of understanding came at a flea market. Arthur, trying to test the waters, had taken a few of his mid-level pieces. He set up a table. People browsed. They picked up a Maple the bear, a once-coveted item. They'd ask, $5. He'd scoff, point to the collector's guide price of $200. They'd laugh. They'd actually laugh and walk away. All day long, it was the same. The market hadn't just cooled, it had evaporated. The perceived value, that beautiful, fragile illusion, had popped. By the end of the day, he sold one. A Puncher's The Lobster for $8. He packed up his unsold beanies, his hands numb. The aluminum briefcase of Teenie Beanies sitting at his feet, feeling not like a treasure, but like an anchor, dragging him down to the depths of a cold, hard reality. The silence in his house when he returned was heavier than any he had ever known. He didn't have to tell Carol. She saw it on his face, the shame, the utter, profound humiliation. He had to tell her about the $20,000, about this sure thing that had turned to dust. The fight that followed wasn't loud. It was quiet, and devastating. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about the trust, the shared dream of a secure future, which he had gambled on a pile of plush toys. She didn't yell. She just looked at him, and in her eyes, he saw the reflection of the fool he had been. "Oh, Arthur," was all she said before she turned and went upstairs. He sat alone in his study, surrounded by his kingdom of beans and cloth, and for the first time, he saw it for what it was. Not a collection, not an investment, a monument to his own gullibility, a tomb for his common sense. The boxes appeared a week later, dozens of them. He didn't say a word. He just started packing them away. Each Beanie Baby, once handled with the reverence of a museum curator, was now shoved unceremoniously into a cardboard coffin. Peggy the bear, the one that started it all, went in first. Spot the dog, the prized Princess Diana bear, its purple rose now seeming like a symbol of mourning. He worked for days, a silent, grim penitence. The vibrant colors of his collection disappeared into the brown monotony of stacked boxes. He carried them, one by one, up the pull-down attic stairs, his back aching with the physical and emotional weight. The last thing to go up was the aluminum briefcase. He didn't even open it. He just placed it on top of the highest stack. And then he pulled the stairs up, closing the door on that chapter of his life. He never spoke of it again. Not to Carol, not to his friends, not even to Emily, who was by then a teenager and had long since lost interest in stuffed animals. The secret was sealed away, gathering dust, a silent, shameful scar on his past. Life, as it does, moved on. The years passed. He retired for real. Emily grew up, got married, had children of her own. He and Carol found their way back to each other. The wound of the Beanie Baby crashed, slowly scabbing over into a private, unspoken understanding. He became a grandfather. He taught his grandson how to fly a kite, how to bait a fishing hook. He was, once again, just Arthur, the man in the cardigan, the history teacher. The memory of the professor faded, becoming a distant, almost embarrassing dream, like a childhood fantasy of being a pirate or an astronaut. The attic was never mentioned. It became a place for Christmas decorations and old luggage. Its true contents a ghost everyone politely ignored. The catalyst for the story's final act was his granddaughter, Lily. She was 7, the same age Emily had been in that McDonald's in 1996. She was a whirlwind of energy and curiosity, and she loved the attic. To her, it wasn't a place of shame. It was a treasure chest of mysteries. One rainy afternoon, while Arthur was napping in his armchair, she convinced her grandmother to let her explore. He was woken by the sound of small, excited feet on the stairs. He opened his eyes, and there she was, Lily, and in her arms, she was struggling to carry the aluminum briefcase. "Grandpa," she chirped, her voice full of triumph. "I found a secret spy box." His heart stopped. For a moment, he was back in that hotel conference room, feeling the weight of his foolishness. Carol appeared in the doorway, her expression a complex mix of worry and resignation. Lily was already fiddling with the latches. "How do you open it, Grandpa?" Arthur's first instinct was to snatch it away, to bury it again. But he looked at Lily's face, alight with innocent, unburdened joy. She saw a spy box. She didn't see a monument to failure. He took a slow, deep breath. "Here," he said, his voice a little rough. "Let me." He pressed the latches. The case opened with a quiet hiss. There they were, the Teenie Beanies, dozens of them, lined up in perfect, pristine rows, their little plastic tags still gleaming after all these years. Lily gasped, her eyes wide as saucers. "Toys," she squealed. So many tiny toys. She didn't see retirement lists or projected values. She didn't see a bad investment. She saw a briefcase full of wonder. She started pulling them out, one by one, giving them voices, creating a story right there on the living room rug. The purple elephant was a queen. The spotted dog was her loyal knight. The lobster was a funny-looking monster from the deep. Arthur and Carol watched, silent. He felt Carol's hand slip into his. He looked at her and saw that the worry in her eyes had been replaced by something else, something soft, something like forgiveness. Later that night, after Lily had gone home, taking a carefully selected handful of the spy toys, with her, Arthur and Carol sat in the quiet living room. The briefcase was still on the floor, its contents spilled out like a rainbow. "You know," Carol said, her voice quiet in the dim light, "we were so angry about the money. We were so focused on what we lost." She paused, reaching down to pick up Peggy the bear. "But we never stopped to think about what you were really collecting." Arthur looked at her, puzzled. "What do you mean?" She smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached her eyes. "You weren't collecting money, Arthur. You were collecting excitement. You were collecting a story. For 25 years, you taught history from a book. For those few years, you felt like you were living it. You had friends with code names. For heaven's sake, you went on adventures. You felt alive." Her words landed on him not as an accusation, but as an absolution. She was right. The crash, the loss, the shame, It had blinded him to the sheer, exhilarating joy of the ride, the thrill of the hunt, the camaraderie of his fellow collectors. He hadn't been a fool. He'd been a participant, a willing, joyful passenger on a wild, historical roller coaster. The value was never in the resale price. The value was in the experience itself. He had been so busy calculating the cost of the failure that he had forgotten to treasure the memory of the ride. The real fortune wasn't in the briefcase. It was in the story it represented, a story he had been too ashamed to tell until now. So, what became of the collection? Well, it found its purpose. The following weekend, Arthur and Carol carried all the boxes down from the attic, not with grim faces, but with a sense of ceremony. They spent the day sorting through them, not as failed investments, but as artifacts of a fascinating time. They donated almost all of them to a local children's hospital. Arthur kept a few: the original Peggy, the Princess Diana bear, and the briefcase of Teenie Beanies, which now lives at his granddaughter Lily's house, where it is not a symbol of financial loss, but a bottomless chest of imagination for her and her friends. The kingpin was gone. The professor had retired, but Arthur, the storyteller, had finally returned. And the story he now tells, the one you've just heard, isn't a story of loss at all. It's a story of a man who, for a brief, brilliant moment, caught a fever, and in doing so, found a piece of himself he never knew he had. A story he's finally ready to share. And if his story reminded you of a forgotten passion of your own, perhaps a dream you tucked away in your own attic of memories, well, maybe it's time to take another look. We'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey with Arthur, liking the video and subscribing helps us bring more of these true, heartfelt tales to you. Because every life, no matter how quiet it seems on the surface, is hiding a secret worth telling.